Welcome to this experiment where I attempt to play board games, specifically war games, but there may be some other kinds. I assume they'll go poorly or they'll just peter out or I'll flounder, because that seems to be how I do things. But mainly I needed to learn something for work. I do video work for a living, and I needed to learn something, and so I thought the best way to do that would be to try and tackle a project to motivate myself to give it a shot. So what I set up here is the 1980, I guess, SPI game by John Hill called Battle for Stalingrad. You might know John Hill from such timeless classics as Eastern Front Tank Leader. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously know him from like Squad Leader, Cross of Iron, Barlev, Yalu, but mostly Squad Leader, I imagine. Here's my first scorching hot burner. I think I like Squad Leader better than Advanced Squad Leader from the little time I've spent with both. But yeah, so what I'm looking at here is the Battle for Stalingrad in the sort of the movement impulse phase, which is sort of the third part of the turn. And you might be wondering, why are you starting with the third part? And the funny story is that I'm not. I actually screwed up the recording of the first two parts in classic fashion. So so that's lost time. Actually, it's not lost. It would just be like you were like 9 shots into a evening bender. It's that blurry. It's pretty bad. So it's not really usable. But so here we are in the third sort of phase of the sequence of play. The first phase is, you drop air power all over the place and you start picking off units left and right. The second phase is artillery, which, sort of the same thing. But that's the idea is, you're sort of doing your opening salvos, try and thin out the forces in front of you. This game is actually kind of interesting in a way because it utilizes a lot of asymmetry to differentiate the Soviets and the Germans. And by that I mean, like, in the, say, like the air combat phase, the Germans have a lot more freedom on how they place points. They're allowed to sort of like take a shot and see what happens, take a shot at the same place. The Russians, on the other hand, have to allocate everything beforehand. So they have to decide up front what everything's going to do. Sort of the similar thing with artillery. Artillery, the Soviets, if they want to combine artillery, they have to have it, placed in certain ways. And there's a lot of little details that hopefully we'll get into if I manage to record the next air and artillery phase in focus as opposed to the first one. But now we're in the sort of third part of this turn, which is the movement phase. And how it kind of works, again, asymmetry, is Germans get to go first. They get to move a bunch of things. When they do a certain action, specifically, a lot of times I think it's attack, then you draw a random chit. If you draw a Soviet activation phase, then the Soviets take over for a little bit. And, they can keep going, I think up to like 2 or 3 moves. There's a certain limit. But if they happen to roll like a natural 6 on anything during that thing, it sort of cancels the whole operation, and it reverts back to the Germans and their, and their impulse. So as you can see here, I've got, the mass. So just for, obviously, this end of the map is north, south, east, west. Over here on the west, I've got the bulk of the German forces. I spent a lot of my air points doing damage up here. Same with artillery. I had a lot of luck. There's a pretty decent dead pile. Let me see if I can show it to you over here. It's the start of a dead pile right there. I don't know if that is coming through. So basically I get to move units, conduct overruns, ground attacks. Soviet player can instant counterattack if I move a German unit adjacent to certain Soviet units. So basically the German picks a stack, he moves and attacks with it. If the German conducts any type of attack, like I said, the Soviet player draws a reaction chit. And if that chit says, hey, it's a Soviet reaction phase, then the Soviets get to take over the move. So with that, let's see what happens. One quick thing about the map, it's hard to see, but if you look under certain hexes, I'm trying to find one that has it. You can see here it's got a V. Those are the victory hexes. Yeah, the way to win the game is to basically for the Germans to get 12 victory hexes, which are those hexes with the V's in them, and do it by the end of turn 7. And because, I'm an idiot, I decided not to start with some kind of scenario. I figured I'll just run face first into the whole campaign until either I get through it or Like I said, the whole thing crashes in flames. So with that, let's start by moving some Germans. So going over here, we're going to start in the upper left up here. And what you see is you got a counter with 3 numbers. Look like on top, like that 4318. That looks like anti-tank. And so what you're seeing is the first number is firing into basically a clear hex. Second number is when you're firing into like lesser terrain. I don't know if it's literally clear and only clear hexes, but it's sort of a more favorable terrain. Middle number is when you're firing into less favorable terrain, enemies in cover, stuff like that. Third number might be movement points. You see down here the movement point costs. It's also the combat chart. Actually, not the combat chart, but it's the terrain effects chart. Okay, so the way the terrain effects chart, these rows work, is obviously row 1 talks about the terrain itself. 2 is the cost for movement points. The third column is all about zone of controls. Does that hex impact zone of controls in any way for the units? 4 is the effect on artillery and air points when you're firing into that hex. 5 is the addition to the die when conducting an air attack, bombardment, or offensive fire into that hex. 6 is the effect on Soviet defensive fire if the Soviet unit occupies it. 7 is the effect on German defensive fire if the Soviet unit occupies it. Here's the movement and impulse phase for turn 1. All right, so we have this part of the map. You can sort of see it's got like sort of a red outline. In that red outline, supposed to be 29th Motor Division of the German Army. Now, the units, they don't matter. Like any 3-8 is the same as any other 3-8. They're interchangeable. Some of them have like little names on them, so you can sort of, get them in the right group. If you looked at the setup chart, it sort of groups it with, some names on it, but the reality is they don't matter. A lot of the Russians you can see here in a line, they have these little stars. That just means you're required to put a unit there. So a lot of this is sort of dictated for the Soviets at setup. Okay. How are they going to move? So you can see that stack there that I just moved around has an anti-tank unit, an engineer, and then some artillery. I should just warn you, I use tweezers like I'm 4 hours into a major coke binge. It's not very clean. I'll probably drop things all over the place. So I apologize for that ahead of time. But like I said, we've got an engineer unit, got an anti-tank unit, and we've got some artillery. The artillery has a range of 12. Sorry, the artillery has, in this case, a range of 8. The fire strength of 10, movement of 12. Now I'm trying to see. We want to obviously start making our way here. I think there's a victory hex right there, so that could be one of our first objectives. So let's start seeing what happens. One other thing, you notice that some of the text is black, some of the text is white. This game sort of uses an interesting way to tell like who's moved and who hasn't. Turn 1, everyone starts on the black text side, and then when you've completed your movements, your turn, whatever you're going to do, flip it over to the white text side. So you can see here, like, that means that artillery is already fired. Same for that artillery in the stack. That artillery is already fired, so he's not going to get to participate in some ways. Okay, so you can see down here, woods cost 2 movement points, so 2 points. Light structure costs 1. It's 3 points. Now, if I move adjacent to Soviet units, they can potentially do an instant counterattack. But this unit has already flipped, so I have a feeling I can move next to him, and it's not a big deal. But I might be playing it wrong. So take all of this with a 10-pound grain of salt. Okay, so that stack's moved. I don't think they get to do an instant counterattack because he's already flipped, so let's move to the next stack. And and you see another artillery been revealed that I fired during the parts that were unusable. So there we go. So that's 2 movement points. Now I'm on a road, which I could take for half movement points each. Let's see what happens. You know what? I think I'll just do it. Okay, so I've just moved next to a Soviet unit. Now I need to figure out, does it do an instant counter? I think it's an instant counterattack, so it would happen right now if the Soviets wanted to do it, and then I would do some kind of overrun if I wanted. So let me figure that out real quick. One quick thing, I should have flipped these units over, because they've done moving for the turn. All right. So with that, I don't know if the Soviets are going to do a counterattack. 3 versus a 6. I can't see that going super well for them. So what I'm going to then move on to is the German attack of that unit. Now, this game does have overrun attacks, but I don't think I have the units needed. You know, I have to have some kind of armor or some kind of something, motorized infantry, something. I don't think I have that for this stack. Okay, so there's a couple of steps here for an attack. First, as the Germans, I could deploy artillery. Now, if you could see, a lot of my artillery up in that corner I think has already been used. I'll double check, though. Said cocaine hands. Yeah, a lot of my artillery up in there has already been used, so I'm not going to be adding that. But what I can do, got some dive bomber air points. What I can do is I can deploy that to this specific attack, and maybe I'll just do that to see what happens. I have a feeling it might not be necessary, but let's just do it. Now, the other thing I can do is the Germans, and again, this is part of the asymmetry I was talking about, is that I can now move other units in support of this attack. So what I could do is this. I could take that tag marker just to sort of track what I'm doing, and now I can move any units that can actually reach that area in support. So like there's a stack, say, here. Another bit of asymmetry. I think the Germans' stacking limit, as you just saw, is 3. I think the Soviets are only 2. So now I've got sort of this well-supported German attack going after this singular Russian infantry. And I could even probably dogpile more on from the corner if I wanted to, right? Because why not? They got to get down there anyway. So, yeah, there we go. I mean, now it's almost starting to feel mean, but, you know, I guess that's the whole point. So, now we can do this supported attack against that single unit, and I assume wipe it off the face of the map. So let's figure that out. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these units have 2 fire numbers. The first one being when you're firing into clear terrain. The second one when you're firing into basically anything else, unless you are stacked with like an infantry or an engineer unit. So a lot of these tanks might not be attacking at full strength. Let's see who's stacked with them. Yeah, so some of them have motorized infantry, but that doesn't seem to count for using the higher number. So probably something I should have thought about when I was building out these stacks, but I had no idea what I was doing. So there we go. So let's add these up and get this attack going. So we've got an engineer in that space. So I think that's going to let the tank and the motorized infantry attack at full strength. So we've got a 6, a 3, and a 5 for a total of 14. I also got this hex with a 2 and a 4 because it's an engineer. So it's 14, that's 20. Now this guy is not going to have any help from infantry on the ground. So we're going to get to 20, 22, 24, 27 to 3. So 27 to 3. Actually, before we do that, the next step is we actually have to determine if this attack is a surprise. There's three sort of types of attacks. There's a normal, I think there's a surprise, and there's an ambush. So it's a d6 roll. So a 3 falls into the normal attack. A 1 would have been a surprise, 6 would have been an ambush. Anyway, so with that, we're definitely going to be using row 5. It's going to be a +1 to the German attack roll on the 27 column, which is basically 26 through 29, because the Soviets are in light structures. The higher on the table you go, the less damage you do. So let's see. Well, they rolled really well. So a 2 on that column is going to do 5 damage. So obviously more than enough to take care of that one unit. But let's see what the 3 does. And again, because they're in the light structure, so in this case it actually helps them. So they get a -1 on the 3 column. So let's see how much damage they do. A 3 goes down to a 2 for 1 point of damage. Okay, so let's take off the casualties. In this case, there is no flipping. You just flip them. You just take them right off the table. And who are the Germans going to lose? Feels like it has to be that 218 engineering. You can probably imagine this game starts wiping units off the map pretty quickly. All right, so now once you do the attack, you flip them all over. They're done for the turn. Okay, now, because we did an attack, we have to draw a chit to see if the initiative changes over to the Soviets. So let's do that really quickly. That's what I drew, deployed. So let's see what that does. All right, because I don't know what I'm doing, the deployed chits are not supposed to be in the cup at all. Those are supposed to help sort of mark certain artillery units that do stuff. So let me clean that up and try that again. All right, you can see there's a whole bunch of chits. All the deployed ones are not supposed to be in there. So I'll pull those out. And I'll go into deployed artillery in just a second. I think that's basically going to be how the Germans can move artillery in to help support an attack. And sort of let you know which units are part of the attack during the fight, and then you can remember to flip them over. There we go. Look at this. All those chits, most of them are not supposed to be there because I'm a professional. Like I said, I had no idea what I'm doing. The other problem for me, like I said, Coke cans. The other problem for me, and I don't know if this happens to a lot of people, is I read the rules and I'm all excited. Then about 400 things in real life kick in, and then it's about a month and a half later before I can try the game itself. And by that point, I've literally forgotten everything I read. And that's sort of the case with this one. Like, I recorded the first session where everything was super blurry, probably about a month ago. And yeah, so I'm sort of trying to recall. There's going to be a lot of little things that I forget, little nuances in Chrome. Okay, so let's try this again. So we're gonna reach in here. I can't see. Hold. No reaction. Okay, so that means the Germans get to keep going. All right, we'll stick with that upper left corner, the southwest, and keep going from there. Now, I think units there, like I said, the stacking limit is 3 for German units, but I believe you can pass through. So I'm just going to double check that. All right, yeah, I was right about that. That's pretty standard, so they're going to start moving through. Two, 4, 6, 7. Okay, so I'm going to probably do the same thing. I'm declaring attack in this hex, right? So now I get to move units in support, should I choose. Do I want to declare an instant counterattack? Obviously not. That's a militia unit, probably going to get rolled. I'm trying to get to this artillery. Let's see if I can knock that out. Victory hex right there. So that's sort of the start of this push. Now, I might be out of hexes to support that fight. I think it's just going to be those two. Now, could declare an instant counterattack from there. The Soviets actually might be able to link up these three into that single hex. One thing I missed over here at that first fight. One thing you can do is you get breakthrough points in this game, which I forgot all about. It's sort of advancing after combat. So in this case, we had one unit in the hex, but we actually rolled enough damage to kill 5. So what that does is 5 minus 1 gives you 4 breakthrough points. Each breakthrough point allows you to move 1 unit or 1 stack of units 1 hex after the fight. So in this case, all 3 of those stacks can move forward because of that breakthrough. So let me do that real quick. Oh, such beautiful, beautiful tweezer work. Actually, I'm going to go from there to there. I think these guys can move along the coast, so I'm going to do that. Hopefully that's allowed. I guess we'll find out later on when I realize I played everything wrong. Okay, so that takes care of the breakthrough points. So now down here, I could do an instant counterattack, 3, 4, 5 against... Well, I guess it'd be against 6. Because they don't have motorized infantry. They don't have regular infantry or an engineer to help them out with that first number. So, you know what? I've done dumber things, so why not just see what happens? Okay, so we're going to do an instant counterattack. Let's see if it's a regular surprise or an ambush. A 2. That's going to fall into a normal attack. Now, the Soviets could now... I guess both sides might be able to do this. You could start throwing in some artillery, but they've already flipped, so they can't do that. Probably should have saved it instead of taking weak pot shots earlier on in the blurred out part. But let's just see what happens. So we're going to be using column rows 5 and 6 again. 5, this is all light structure. So we're going to get a +1 die roll to the attacker because it's light structures. Now 7 is for the German defensive, so we're going to be using the -1 there. So here is the Soviet roll on the 5 column. They rolled a 4. They're going to add a 1. It's not going to be great. That actually just gets them out of range of doing any damage, so there's no effect. Now for the Germans, we're going to get them to do a -1. And they're on the 6 column. Now that might just squeak by. 5 minus 1 is a 4. That's going to do 1 point of damage. Oh, interesting. So now the attack was against that hex. So let me see what happens. Okay, so that might be something I've just sort of learned here involving general tactics. So it seems like what sacrificing that militia unit did for the Soviets is by sort of getting killed in the hex that the Germans are trying to move into, it's going to stop them from doing all the the breakthrough point potential. So those guys might all be done moving, and it prevents the southernmost 4318 stack to advance into the hex they were trying to take. So let me flip these over. All right. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I would not have thought to do that. Okay. So that's that stack. Let's move the next one. All right. Okay, so I'm going to declare an attack on this hex right there, on that 3-8 Soviet infantry. So now, can I bring anyone into support? I can't. Zone of controls, I think, would prevent German units from just blowing through gaps like that. So I've got to be able to get around and still come in for support. So the hex I could come into support is there. Could suffer a counterattack. Boom, boom, boom. So I might just go from there to there and leave it at that because I don't want to get triple teamed right there. So for the Germans, we've got motorized infantry and 2 tanks. That's going to mean they're firing on their weaker number. So I might throw some dive bomber air points at this one to help dislodge that unit. Because I'm looking at a 2, 4, a 7. 7. I only need to kill 1 unit, but I'm going to get a 1 added to my die. So I'd have to get basically a 4 or less. So yeah, let me see what happens with throwing some dive bomber units at there. I guess first and foremost, let's see what kind of attack is it. A 1. That's going to make it a surprise attack. So in this case, the defending units are considered to be unprepared for the attack. Okay, so with the dive bomber points, it's basically added to your fire strength total, and I've got a total of 7. If you can see, dive bomber air points, I don't know if you can, it's upside down, but it's 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So you can't just do 1. You have to do it in increments of 2. And I've got a total for right now of 26. So I'm going to throw 2, 4, 6. I'm going to throw 6 dive bomber points at that attack. You know what? I'm going to throw 4. So I've got an 11 total, which should be able to give me almost an automatic elimination. Let me see if there's any... Yeah, I'm not seeing any anti-aircraft in the area. Well, that one's already... Well, I guess that could do it, maybe, but that's already flipped over. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that could help drop that dive point number down. So let's figure out the attack for a surprise. So the way a surprise attack works, I believe, is that, say I'd been attacking, I don't know, this hex. Like, I think all of these Soviet hexes could have participated in the defense under normal conditions. When it's a surprise attack, only the hex you're attacking gets to provide the defensive fire. So in this case, I don't think it's going to matter too much because I was only attacking that hex right there. But I think that's sort of what separates it. So let's do, let's do the defensive part first. It's a 3. It's going to get a +1 to their die roll. So let's see what happens. Okay, let's do the Germans first. They're on the 11 column. They're going to get a +1 to their die roll. Oof, they rolled terribly, but I think it's not going to matter. A 7 still eliminates 1 unit. Now the Russians are firing on the 3 column. They get a -1 to their die roll. A 2 on the 3 column. It's going to eliminate 1 unit. Okay. Gosh, I kind of feel like I eliminate the mobile infantry. I don't know if that's the right move, but okay. So our roll only allowed us to eliminate 1 Soviet unit. There was only 1 unit there, so we don't get any breakthrough points. So we're not allowed to advance after combat. And then we flip those guys over. Now we would draw another chit. Let's No reaction. So, Germans go again. As each German no reaction shit pulls out, obviously the Soviet taking over becomes more and more likely. So let's start with this pile over here. What I'm thinking I'm going to do, I don't know if this is going to be worth it, but I might punch a hole here. And then maybe these guys can hook around and get into the backfield, bypassing these little guys here. That's what I'm thinking. Who knows if it's going to work. Up here, I'm trying to think, do I hook around this way? Do I even bother? Because there's supply, you can cut people off. Zones of control, do things with that as well. These guys have a movement of 12, so it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they can start getting back there in general. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll use these forces to punch a hole at this road and then move on from there. So given that, I'm going to have him go that, but I'm not going to support it. Well... I'm also starting to wonder, does motorized infantry and mechanized infantry count as helping out armor units to get their higher attack? On some level, it feels like it would, because it is infantry, but the rulebooks, and again, this might just be my dimness, the rulebook specifically just says, infantry, but I don't know if it's trying to use like the all-encompassing, it didn't specify, but I don't know if it's just trying to be like, hey, infantry is infantry, whether it's motorized, mechanized, or if it's specific to infantry units to get in there and get dirty. I'm just going to stick with infantry as the most strict interpretation, because that's what I did, and we'll just go from there. But it feels like if it's infantry, if it's got an infantry component, at the same time, why would a mechanized infantry? Let me just double check. At the same time, yeah, mechanized infantry has 2 numbers, so obviously it wouldn't need 2 numbers if it was the way I was thinking about interpreting. So I think I was right. Okay. So let's start with this. We've got a 2-1-6. Now, even though it's a flipped over unit, you can always fight defensively. It's going to fight poorly, because it's only going to get that 1. But, well, let me double check that. It might be an anti-armor. Yeah, that's actually an anti-air unit, so that's going to... Yeah, that's going to go poorly. So let's just do that. I don't think... Well, I'm on the 7 column. Now, a 7 column plus 1 means if I roll a 5 or a 6, I'm going to miss. So let me throw some dive bomber points at it, because I really want to punch this hole. So I go from a 7 column to the 9 column. That should basically guarantee anything on a 5 or less. So let's do that roll. First of all, I guess I gotta see if it's a surprise attack, normal, ambush. The normal attack. I'm on the 9 column. 1. Okay, that's a great roll. Even though I'm adding 1 for terrain, it's gonna eliminate that unit. They get to roll on the 1 column. They roll a 3, but there's gonna be a -1 for the terrain. Is there? They're over here. Yeah. Okay, so they get a -1. So it's a 2 on the 1 column. Doesn't do anything. Okay. So I rolled a 1 on the 9 column, which is 3. So they're going to get 2 breakthrough points. So they're going to go bump first for the second. All right, they get flipped over. All right, let's move this stack. Continue the breakthrough. All right, so we got a lot of artillery there that we have not used yet. We've got a range of 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they can start hitting there and support. So I think I'm going to not use them here, but I might throw a unit in support. Or do I just go with dive bomber points? and save those units. I'm on a 3. To make sure I really hit, I need to probably get to a 9. So let's do that. 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay, so I'm on the 9 column now. Let's see what kind of attack it is. It's a 1. So it's a surprise attack, which again, it's not going to impact things too much here, I believe, because it's just, that would be the only hex available to return fire. Do the Soviets want to do an instant counterattack? Honestly, I'm going to say yes. Let's see what happens. So do I declare the dive bomber points first? I don't think I do. So 1, 2, 3. So let's do that surprise attack the instant counterattack first. What kind of attack is it? It's a 2, which is a normal. They're attacking. The Germans are in woods, so they're going to get a +1 to the die roll on the 2 column. That's a pretty good roll. That's going to do it. They eliminate. Now I believe, let me just double check if we pull a chit. But the unit would have obviously participated in its defense. So it's going to get a roll on the 3 column. 3 on the 3 column. Okay, at least they trade blows. Although, no, that wasn't anti. Okay. One exception is you can't do instant counterattack with anti-tank units, but that was infantry. Another thing is like breakthrough movement can also trigger an instant counterattack, but that militia is not going to go nuts. Okay, because the Germans participated in the counterattack, the reason why you wouldn't participate is if you were hoping to keep moving. You know, if you sort of move next to a unit, they counterattack, you survive, you keep moving. But because the Germans fought back, we do draw a chit. All right, let's see what we got. Soviet reaction. All right, the Soviets are going to take over, and I'm going to take a break.